We're back for yet another gear video. This is where I like to nerd out. I like to talk about this little camera equipment that gets me going. I enjoy camera gear. I am a photographer, and I have the same problem as you guys where a new piece of gear comes out and that's all I want to buy. I actually just was on my Instagram today and I saw that the M2 is now being rumored for MacBook Pros. Everyone went ahead and bought this beast of an M1 chip, and now, oh, here we go. Apple in 2022 is already rumoring their M2 chip. So here we go. If you haven't upgraded yet, then probably wait. That's the beauty of the industry. That's the beauty of what we live in whenever we're using so much technology. But, it is what it is. The M1's a beast, but that's not what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about lenses that I think are great, affordable lenses, but they are also really good. I'm talking about the best lenses for under $400. Now, we're going to also touch on one that I believe is over $400. I'm not necessarily sure, but we're talking about the different options for a 50 millimeter lens. So this video, I'm talking about the Canon ones. So if you're not a Canon shooter, if you're not interested in Canon glass, then, well, I'm sorry to hear it, but you can go on and get out of here. So today we're going to start and talk about the one that I have. I wouldn't necessarily say it is my favorite, but it's the one that I've used the most. This baby right here. So if you can't see it, this is the 50 millimeter f1.4. This is the EF lens, and it's a nice lens, but there are drawbacks. That's how a lot of these 50 millimeter lenses are, but that's just the nature of the beast. If you have a kit lens, a lot of people, including myself, will recommend your next step should probably be a 50 millimeter. It'll help you get that blurred background, that bokeh that everyone likes. It'll help you kind of add production value whenever you're starting out. All you're trying to do is act more professional than you are because, you're starting out. You're not going to be super professional. You're not going to have the most seamless client process whenever you have clients coming along. So you can do different things to make your content look more professional to start heading in that direction. This 50 millimeter 1.4 is a nice lens, but one of the main drawbacks for me is the autofocus. The autofocus on this thing is honestly horrible. Whenever you pair it up with an R5 that has amazing autofocus, and it's not a fair comparison, but for my personal use, I'm comparing this autofocus to the RF 24 to 70 that I have on right now, and this thing is brutal. I'm sure I can't even see. I probably lost focus with that as I was talking about that. Wouldn't that be ironic? But this 50 millimeter, it has awful autofocus. You can hear it, which I hate. You can hear the clicking whenever it's working. So that is a huge drawback for me personally. Whenever you have a shotgun mic on, it just sounds horrible. But along with that, it's just not fast. For this, I can go closer, I can back up, and I have the eye tracking on, so it's not losing me at all. This thing would just be searching and searching. I'd be out of focus, I'd be in focus, and rightfully so. It can be like that because it has such a shallow depth of field. But that's why with the lens that's at a 1.4 aperture, you need good autofocus, in my opinion. Manual focus at an f1.4, 1.8, 1.2, it's damn near impossible to get it tack sharp. So if I can use my awesome autofocus, which is one of the reasons I pay top dollar for a camera like the R5, you need a nice lens to pair up with it. So this 1.4, 50 millimeter 1.4 probably isn't your best option if you're looking for one that'll be the best autofocus. But if your price point is below that $400 mark, this probably is going to be your best bet. The only one that you're going to find cheaper for this is the 50 millimeter 1.8. Now, I don't have one on hand, but it's about half the size of this. And this is the lens that if you're starting out trying to make your videos, photos look better, get it. The 50 millimeter 1.8, I believe, if I had to guess, is like a $150 lens, $200 lens. And it's a beast. Everyone starts out with it. Everyone sees it and they're like, oh, this looks like a professional photo. So if that's what you need to do to get your business to the next level, spend that little amount of money, get it, but you are going to have some drawbacks. the autofocus, just like this, it honestly might even be worse than the 1.4. This is a plastic lens that you're buying. Everything about it is plastic. There's nothing that is metal. This Canon one, this EF lens, you can see the back right there. It is metal. So whenever it's metal, it's just a better form factor. It's just going to be better with the wear and tear. It's not that big of a deal, but you are going to see your 1.8 break down quicker than the 1.4. So the 1.8, I would say, is your best bet if your price point is low, and I would honestly buy it over this 1.4. People might not agree with that, but there's really no sense in buying the Canon 1.4 for that extra $200 whenever it's just a specialty lens. You can use the autofocus on both of them well enough if you're shooting portraits because you'll have time. Usually this is a big portrait lens. Whenever you're starting out, for me especially, I was shooting a lot of portraits. You're trying to get as much work under your belt. You're trying to get a portfolio together so that you can share and maybe get some paying clients down the line. So getting that 50 millimeter 1.8 will help you push your business in the right direction, will help you get your photos to a great spot so that they look more professional. The next one that we're talking about, my buddy John has, and it's not the one I have in my hand once again, but it is the Sigma 1.4. The Sigma 1.4 is a sick lens. This thing, I believe, retails at about $700, and it is the best middle of the road lens that you can buy if you're looking for that 50 millimeter lens. Now you might be sitting here like, so I'm paying double the amount of money for not only the same lens as this one that I have in my hand right here, but I'm paying double the amount of money for a different brand that's not native with the body. I know it sounds crazy, but it's part of the Sigma Art series. The Sigma Art series has a lot of nice glass, and I can't recommend it enough. The Sigma lens will have better autofocus than this one. I believe when Canon was making this 50 millimeter 1.4, they kind of sacrificed some different areas so that it could be a low price point. I appreciate that. You know, coming from my perspective, it was nice. I could get this thing early. I could make my videos look really good. And I used this thing a lot at the beginning of my career. I don't necessarily use it that much anymore. But the Sigma 50mm f1.4 is actually going to be your best bet whenever you're in the market for a 50mm and don't have a huge budget, but also don't have a tiny budget. This has great autofocus, as well as it's just more sharp. It's just sharper than my Canon one. But I don't have much to say about that other than it's better than the Canon 1.4. Don't come at me. I believe it's true. It's a little bit bigger than this, but I think it's just nicer. It's sharper. The autofocus is better. That's what you want to pay for, especially if you're out here shooting weddings, shooting events, and trying to get that depth of field. The best on the market, without a doubt, is the Canon 50mm 1.2. So you could have guessed that. They have an EF and an RF version. The EF version, if you're pairing it up with the mirrorless body, as you know, you will need an adapter. The adapters slow down the lenses a tiny bit, probably nothing that you can notice that much. So you could get the EF one for a little bit of a lower price point, but the RF one is the nicest lens I've ever used. I know that's high praise, but this thing is so good. It is so sharp. The autofocus is just as fast as my 24-70, and it just doesn't get any better. It is the best portrait lens that you can get, and it is also a really nice lens to differentiate what you're doing. If you're doing product photography, by all means, it's a great lens. It'll be the best 50mm lens that you could possibly buy, and it makes sense because at the end of the day, it's the most expensive. So you have the full range of lenses. You have everything from that EF 50mm 1.8 that is all plastic. The autofocus isn't that great, but you can use it if you're starting out. You have that all the way to that RF 50mm 1.2. You will be able to see the differences. The sharpness will be different. The autofocus will be different. And I'm sure there are other features that I don't necessarily know about that will be different, but you can see a difference. So in my opinion, if you are in the market trying to try out a 50mm, maybe rent one of them for a week. Maybe rent it and see what's best for you. But if you just want to buy one right now, the Sigma 1.4 is a really nice lens that you can go with. It'll have great autofocus as well as being really sharp and be at that middle of the road price point, so you won't necessarily have to drop $2,000 on this lens. I know it's annoying whenever you're not necessarily buying the nice gear that you want, but sometimes it's not worth going the top of the line. If you're only going to use this lens for sometimes, then you might want to allocate that money over to buying maybe that 24-70 or the 28-70, one of those cover-all lenses that are going to be a little bit more pricey that you might use every single day, and they might be your main shooter. So if you're in the market for a 50, there's my advice. Take it as you will. I'm not out here trying to tell you exactly what gear to get. That's what I have just seen over time as I've used different gear. So I appreciate you guys watching, and I enjoy making these gear videos. I hope it helps. I hope it kind of helps you go in the right direction and helps you kind of make a decision, because I just sit here and rip through YouTube videos whenever I'm in the market for a new lens or a new laptop. So this is my raw opinion on how you can take your gear to the next level without necessarily spending all of your life savings, because this gear can get so damn expensive. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out. Please think about subscribing and sharing with your friends. It does help. I know I sound so cliche, but I know it sucks, but I gotta say it. Thanks, guys.